So if you click this link, then you're interested in mixing, but maybe you're a super beginner. Now, who am I talking to? I am talking to people who are just starting to dabble in mixing, who are just realizing that mixing is a thing and that it's important. And, you really want to start taking yourself a bit more serious as a recording technician or recording artist, if that's what you do. If you play your own instrument and then record it yourself and want to make it sound polished and decent, then that's what we're aiming for today. What I want to do is I want to share my perspective of mixing and basically share it in the most logical way I can that gets to the very core of what the big idea is that you're doing. The first and most important thing that I want to stress is that even though you may not even necessarily play an instrument yourself, you are an artist. What matters is that you're an artist, and your intuition, when you perceive and hear and judge what you want to do in every single measure, in every single section, in every single track, that is what is going to set you apart as somebody of authority, somebody to come to. And in order to be trusted with those files, you need to have a reputation of great intuition. What do I mean by intuition? I mean that you have to intuitively know and develop your instinct to know what is good and bad. I want you to apply this philosophy to every single section that we're about to go over. Your intuition needs to be sharp, and it needs to be refined. Always treat everything you do as contributing to it. All right, cool. So I want to start with balance. Now, first thing, you need a DAW or a digital audio workstation. This is your workstation. This is your easel. Think of it like that. It's holding everything. With whatever DAW you're working in, I would say get very familiar with that DAW. Know it inside and out, because you have to know where the buses are. You have to know what a bus is. You have to know where the EQs are, because EQs, post-production, are your friends. If you're at a point where you're not setting your levels just right when you're recording, you're going to need to polish it after the fact. And polishing it after the fact, that's what mixing all is about. Now, assuming that you're already to the point where you know how to record, because this is not a video about recording. Let's say you have your tracks. Let's say you have a MIDI track, a drum track, you have a vocal track, and then say one more instrument, guitar. I'm going to say 5. I'm throwing the bass in there. I can't leave the bass out. You need to consider these 5 tracks. Pause for just a second. The more tracks you have, the more essential it is to label your tracks, okay? Label your tracks. You will thank me. Okay, when you record, say it's set to 0. Say the gain is set to 0 for each track. Don't turn them up. Instead, try turning them down. There needs to be balance. There are some things that people typically do that you don't really want to do. Typically, people turn up the bass too much. And as a bass player, that breaks my heart. But turn the bass down. Unless, and this is all going back to your intuition. You have to be intuitive. What sounds right? If you're not using a set of monitors, you need to get yourself a set of monitors, because your intuition is not going to grow if you can't accurately hear your monitors. They need to be spaced out evenly, facing towards you. Think of them like a triangle. You have to be able to hear what's coming out of your left speaker and your right speaker, and it needs to be of equal distance to you so that you can gauge this accurately, because you need to hear what's actually happening. If you don't have a good set of monitors, then get yourself a good set of studio headphones. Adjust the volume levels. When you're balancing the levels, less is more. It's better that they're quieter in the mix, and then you can turn them up later. Okay, next is the EQ. With the EQ, you are carving a space for each range of frequency. So one thing that you want to do is you want to create a cutoff from 50 hertz and down, because everything that's happening down there is not really audible so much as it'll just create like a low end rumbling, and it'll sound muddy and you won't really know where that's coming from. And it's just going to be like, what is that? And then with EQ, you want to sculpt out each section, because think of it like this. If you have the kick drum and the bass guitar kind of both kicking around between 60 hertz and 250 hertz. So if they're both occupying that space, you need to use EQ to cut into each a bit so that where one is loud, the other is softer, just to create that balance. So the mid-range between 500 and 2000 kilohertz, that's about the mid-range. So what's happening in the mid-range? What instruments are occupying the mid-range? I personally love to put a spectrometer on the mix so that I can see what is peaking in each range that might be overdoing it. And if you want, you can even put, that spectrometer on each channel just to see what is occupying that space and what needs to be cut down in the EQ and what needs to be raised up in the EQ. And then you have the upper mids, which are between 2000 kilohertz and 4000 kilohertz. So up in that range, that's where all of the higher notes are happening. So you have to be mindful of how much is happening. If your spectrometer is showing those levels shooting up heavily on that side, that's going to be the right side, then you need to start using EQ to bring it down. In all these ways, I need you to think of yourself as an artist. Remember that you're creating space for each instrument. You are creating space for each range of hertz or kilohertz, because you need to develop that sensitivity and that intuition. And I really just want to stress those two, balance and EQ. If you do that, there are so many other things that are important, but I feel that what I am talking about is really going to fine tune and hone your intuition and your ability to judge what is balanced. Because if you don't know what that is, then you need to get there. One of the best pieces of advice I can tell you, listen to a song that you feel is just like so amazing in the mix, like the mix of all the instruments, they're all balanced, the EQ, it's just something that you really admire. Listen to that through your studio monitors or your headset, okay? Because if you do that, now you have a baseline of what you feel is good. You need to also start categorizing different songs based on different projects you're working on. Is it a techno thing that has a heavy low end? Is it a techno thing that has a heavy high end? Start really categorizing different songs that you admire for having amazing quality mixes, and listen to those through your monitors, because you want to replicate that experience through this experience right here where you are. If you don't have a benchmark, you're not going to know it's good. Also, another tip, show it to people. You need to take breaks, but you also need to bring people in and say, hey, what are your thoughts? If you liked this video, then please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if developing your intuition is something that you want to dive in deeper, I have this book that I wrote that goes all through it, and it's specific for self-taught musicians. So if you're a self-taught musician that wants to really hone their musical intuition, then get this book. I made it for you. I wrote it for you. Bye.